Rebonsoir à toutes et à tous. Je vais basculer en anglais parce que le prochain talk de Raphaël sera en anglais. Welcome everybody for this third talk for tonight's session. I will welcome Raphael Awoseyin, who is Chief Customer Officer at Kuypers. He will soon talk to us about the link between quality and customer experience. That is a subject that I find very interesting. So, Raphael, the floor is yours. And
hello, everyone.
Have a nice talk.
All right, thank you. So glad to be here. I'm just gonna go in full screen mode here. So thanks for the invitation. I mean, this is really an honor to speak at this event. So as the title says, I'm going to be talking about the link between quality and customer experience, and I'll talk a little bit about my experience to provide some additional context. So, so just to get started, I'll just show you some of what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to start with an introduction, and then we're going to go into identifying, who our customers are, applying some customer focus techniques, and developing some soft skills. So just a bit about myself. The Chief Customer Officer at Kuypers. Kuypers is I would say a high-end music streaming and download service. We're based in Paris, France. And as a Chief Customer Officer, I'm in charge of customer experience, customer satisfaction, churn, things like that. But before that, I was a QA. I was in the QA world for several years. I did automation, I did manual testing, did some consulting. I also have a blog online at QARAF.com. Haven't written anything lately since I don't do a lot of QA anymore, but the site is still up there. So if you'd like to take a look at the blog. So why I'm giving this talk is really to talk about my experience going from the QA world to the customer experience world. There are a lot of changes, a lot of things to learn. And in retrospect, I think that there are a lot of things that we could, that I would take back to the QA world if I were to go back to the QA world. Some things that I personally wasn't really aware of before starting this journey. So let's look at QA versus customer experience. We're just going to say CX for now. QA CX, it's shorter. So QA can be described as basically a mix of tools and methodologies we use to prevent defects, and also making sure the product corresponds with our customers' needs and expectations. So in QA, we have two basic principles. There is the fit for purpose, which is making sure the product corresponds with its intended purpose. And there's right first time, which is a fancy way of saying we don't have bugs. Oh, sorry about that. So we don't want the first the version we release into production to have bugs. We want it to be as clean as possible. And so that's really the goal. I mean, the ideal QA process would deliver a product with no bugs. But of course, we know that's quite rare, but that's the ideal. So in terms of customer experience, you can see it as the perception and impression a customer has of your product. And so this impression is forged throughout the customer journey. So with every single interaction the customer has with the company, with the product, with the brand, this could be just using the product. It could be just seeing an ad for the product. It could be news about the company. All this influences the customer's experience. And to put it into perspective, if there is a really big bug in your product that makes it into the news on CNN or on some news outlet, that's going to impact the customer experience. So we see how these things start to be linked. But anyway, in terms of customer experience, the two principles are customer experience is centered around people and products. I mean, these are the two major factors that make up a customer experience. And so, putting it into perspective as it pertains to QA, QAs are often the first customers of a product. they're often the first people that will use the product as a user or as a customer. So I think the link between QA and customer experience is really strong, and a lot of QA teams already use a lot of customer experience principles in their jobs. But we're going to take a closer look at this. So identifying who matters. So understanding who our product is for is really important in making sure that the product meets their quality demands. So the first thing is putting the customer at the center of quality. When we're talking about QA and quality, is really about the customer. So often QA can be considered primarily as product focused, because we're focused on what the product does and how it should behave, how it shouldn't behave. And while CX, you're looking at how the customer interacts with the product, how our customer sees the product. So there's really that strong link between the customer experience and QA, and being customer centric demands putting in including some customer experience principles into your QA process or your QA approach. So let's look at the equation. So this is like my favorite. This is my favorite quote for definition of what quality is. So Jerry Weinberg, pretty famous. So he defines quality as value to someone, and I think it's so simple and so clear, and it's true. It is the value to someone, and it's subjective in some ways, and also, of course, objective in a lot of ways. So, but what we're looking at is that someone. So quality is value to someone, and that someone is your target customer, is the person that the product is intended for. So the quality is really the value you delivered to your target customers. So understanding who those customers are and putting them in the center of your QA process is a way of increasing, or at least having the potential of increasing the quality of your product. So we look at some customer-driven KPIs, and these are some standard KPIs we use in customer experience. The first one is churn and retention. Churn is the amount of people that stop using your product. So either you stop using it or they stop paying for it. It can be considered churn. And retention is really just the positive side of it, the number of people who keep using your product. So it's more important in subscription-based services. Like Kuypers is a subscription-based service where people pay monthly or yearly. And so each time a customer makes the decision to continue using your product, that's a good sign. And so that is, of course, linked to how they perceive the quality of the product. The next one's conversion. That's a number of people who, depending on how your business model is set up, it could be just people going to your website and deciding to sign up, or it could be people customers that start with a free trial. Like we have a 1 month free trial, and after that 1 month they start paying. So the people going from the free trial testing the product to a paying customer would be considered a conversion. Then we have customer loyalty. A popular way of measuring customer loyalty is NPS, which is a Net Promoter Score. It's based on just one question: would you recommend this product to a friend or a family member? And usually it's a scale of 1 to 10. And if a customer gives the product a 9 or a 10, they're considered a promoter. So they're big fans of your product. Anything between 8 and I believe it's around 7, they're considered passive. So they like your product, but they're not going to go around telling everyone about it. And things below that, scores below that, are considered detractors. So they are not really big fans of your product for whatever reason. So it's a good way to measure how loyal customers are and how likely they are to stay with you. The last one is customer satisfaction. That's basically, how satisfied the customers are with your product. CSAT is a popular way of measuring that. I believe it's on a scale of 1 to 5, asking how satisfied are you with the product. It's used a lot in customer service. How satisfied were you with the customer service? So let's go into customer segmentation, and that's one of the big things we do in customer experience. It's a way of getting to know your customers. So customer segmentation is about dividing your customer base into groups based on specific criteria that you have defined. So every business is different. You decide what's important for your business, and you divide your customers up based on these metrics. It can be based on a lot of different criteria. We see on the right, demographics. So this I would say is the baseline. So you have, age, gender, occupation, marital status, and then you can go into geographic segmentation based on where they're located. And we also have technographic segmentation, which is really important in tech. So, if you're a product that exists on multiple platforms, which customers are more likely to use your mobile app as opposed to your desktop app or your website. You have the psychographics. That's about their personality. What do they value? What's the attitude? What are they interested in? What are the personality traits? So that's really important and powerful way to segment your customers. And the last one is behavioral segmentation. So that's how they use your product. And that's very data-based. It's data-based. So it's based on all the data you have on the customer's interaction with your product. If, for example, in music, it's the kind of music they listen to, it's what time of the day they listen to music. There are different things you can use to understand people's behavior. So the ideal customer segmentation process takes into account all these different factors. And these factors are used to create customer personas, which we'll talk about in the next slide. But this is just an example of a criteria we can use for customer segmentation. So we see demographics on the left. These are some main questions you want to ask yourself about your customer. And on the right, we have emotions, and this is a bit harder to define. You'll need to really dig into customer feedback and talk to your customers to understand. But with every product, there's usually a pain point. There's a problem that the customer is having in their life, and that is why they're using your product. So for us, it could be just, hey, I need to listen to music, and I don't have the music I would like to listen to. And then, hey, Kuypers, we have music. Could be as simple as that. In terms of challenges, it's basically they have these pain points and there are obstacles in their way to overcome the pain points. So it's basically the problems they face while they're trying to achieve their goals. And their needs are the things that are important to them. What's really important to them? What's their main reason for using your product? When we come into desires and wants, these are the aspirations, and every customer has the things they really aspire to have. It could be the ideal experience. It could be just basic aspirations, their dreams. And then you go into before and after emotions. Before emotions are how they felt before they started using the product, and after emotions is how they feel after using your product. So is your product really making a difference in their life? When we look into personality, we look at their drive, what motivates them, characteristics in terms of their character traits. And here we start going into psychology. Desires, kind of linked with the other desires we mentioned, but this is their core. We're talking about their core desires in their lives in terms of just being a human being. And their fears, of course. What are they afraid of? So all these things are going to help us better understand who our customers are. I mean, it's very deep, probably, much deeper than a typical team outside the customer experience would go into. But these are the things we look at to better understand our customers. So one other way to humanize our customers is to create a persona. So persona is a realistic description of who of our customer base. So it's a representative of a customer segment. So you have different segments. You could, if you have, for example, a geographic segmentation, and you have your French customers. So you can choose a persona that is the typical French customer with all the different characteristics you would see in a typical French customer. So this person isn't supposed to represent everyone, but it's supposed to be a representative of this group. So, for example, looking using music for an example, instead of just talking about music lovers, you can talk about Pierre, who likes classical music. Now we start to humanize the person and not just talk about customers in a general manner. So how do you use personas? So we use personas to guide our testing in terms of it helps us get into the frame of mind for a specific customer segment. And we'll see this later on when we start developing certain features or certain functionalities. These features are for a certain kind of user, because not all users will necessarily use all of the features. So just understanding the typical person that would use this feature or functionality, what they will use it for, and how this person perceives the product, what they expect from the product. So some of these principles are already being used in BDD, behavior-driven development, where you're creating test cases based on customer behavior. But with this methodology, you're encouraged to humanize your customers when you're creating these your test cases or the scenarios. So some of the benefits of segmentation to QA, we already talked about this earlier. So you better understand customer behavior so you can create better test cases, anticipate new features, how these new features will be used by your customers. You can propose more relevant ideas because you understand your customers better. You understand what's really important to your customers and not just the superficial use of your product. And you help the team build better products in general. So it's really a collaborative effort. So let's look at how we can apply customer focus, and putting the customer first is very challenging. It's a transformative experience for any company, and it goes beyond customer experience and beyond QA. It involves everyone. And I know we often say this in QA, that quality is everyone's responsibility. We all need to work together to make sure we have an optimal quality of our product. And it's kind of the same way with customer experience. Being customer focused, you need everyone to be customer focused and not just one team. So the first thing to apply this principle is looking at customer service and support tickets. I mean, this is a gold mine of customer feedback and potential bugs, or even actual bugs that you may not have caught. And so, I mean, you have support tickets depending on how the company functions, but you have support tickets and you have the support, customer service team. So QA, I believe the QA should be really close to the customer service team. And I know in some companies, customer service team is part of the QA. So they also do some testing, and that's depending on what model you want to adopt. But they should be really close because you can anticipate production issues just by looking at what people have been complaining about in the past. You can reproduce production bugs internally by looking at the support tickets. The support tickets can be very similar to bug reports. I mean, depending on how much information you have set up to retrieve with the support tickets. For us, when a customer complains about the product, we get the information about what application they're using, what features they're using. And even for customers, and we'll talk about this later when we go into beta testing, we can even get some logs on their session. And all this is going to help us reproduce the bug internally so we have a better chance of fixing it. So we also understand the real world impact of defects, just going beyond our test cases and seeing something failing. We actually see what happens when this bug occurs in production. And lastly, of course, we verify how efficient a bug fix has been. So, we test bugs in QA, and maybe we go into pre-prod, But then we go into production, and then we kind of cross our fingers waiting, to see if customers are still complaining about bugs. But if customers are going to complain about the bugs, they're going to contact customer service, or they're going to go on a public forum to complain about your product. So there are many channels for customers to complain, and we'll talk about feedback channels later on. But customer service, we hope that customers, when they have an issue, they would contact customer service so we can fix the problem and not complain publicly. So cultivate a strong relationship with customer service and work with them both before, after, and during key deployments. So customer experience basically continues where QA ends. So QA ends when you have your product in production. That's, time's up. The product is in production. But now the customer experience starts. The customer starts to interact with the product or the feature, and we start to get some real world feedback on the quality of our product. So monitor customer feedback. And so like for us, we have an iOS app, we have an Android app, and we have a desktop app. So on the mobile devices, you have the app stores, so you can see reviews and dig into those reviews to see what customers are complaining about. Incorporate the feedback into future improvements. So that's really important, and that's a mark of a customer-centric company or organization. So identify frustrations that customers typically have. So a lot of times the frustrations are going to come out in the reviews. So the thing to keep in mind with customer reviews is the customers that take the time to review your product are, in some level, very outspoken and passionate. So they're either very happy or very upset often. So just to keep that in mind, that not everyone that uses your product is going to give a feedback, especially on a public forum. So make continuous learning a habit. This is really important, because when you're customer focused, when you're constantly reading and paying attention to what customers are saying about your product, you're always learning. You're always learning something new. You're learning about your product. You're learning about what customers use your product for. And you're also learning about your industry. For me, I'm always learning about the music industry. I'm learning about classical and jazz, because a lot of our customers are classical and jazz music fans. So find out about topics related to your product, and just learn more about that. That provides you a bit more context into the world your customers live in. And learn about the business side. I mean, for me, one of the reasons I got involved into QA in QA was because I wanted to be a bit closer to the business, as opposed to be just purely technical. And understanding the business really gives you perspective on the meaning of what you're doing, the meaning of your product. Because people use, especially products that people pay for. I mean, your products mean something to people. And so just understanding what that means, understanding what that means to your company, what the feature you're developing means to your company in a global sense, really helps you in improving your approach to QA. So one thing to keep in mind, and this is especially true if you work in a passion-driven field, you are not representative of all your customers. So you may be a big hip hop fan and you love hip hop and you want to read a lot of articles and create lots of hip hop playlists, but not everyone is like that. So, we have customers that literally only listen to classical music or only listen to opera. I mean, for me, that's weird, but that is a customer. And so when they complain about something, when they complain about looking for songs in A minor or something like that, you need to understand that, that's a real problem, and not because, even though it may not be an issue for you, it is a problem for your customers. So explore different ways of using your product, not necessarily just the way you would usually use the product or you think people will use your product. So put yourself in the customer's shoes, and this is why we have the persona. So understand when you have a persona, really get into their frame of mind and try to use the product the way they would use the product. And this last point is really important because it's something that we strongly believe in. It's beta testing and crowd testing, and I would add user testing to this list. So these are the thing about these three types of testing is they put the product into the hands of real customers. And there's nothing better than giving the product to real customers and letting them use it. I mean, that's where you really start to see get the feedback. So I believe it's really important for a customer focused product or company to start incorporating some of these practices. So avoid a temptation to dismiss bugs because you think like, who does that? But you know what? Somebody's doing that and they're paying for your product. So it's important. Eat your own dog food. So this expression is used for, it's basically a way of saying your customers, you should use your own product. And of course, this depends on what product you're working on. I'm fortunate enough to work on a consumer product where, it's something that I can use every day. But as much as possible, use your own product. Use it as regularly as possible. And this is really where you become a customer. So you are one with the customer. Incorporate a regular use of your product in, if not your personal life, your work life. Use your product to solve a real problem. Really just have like a real issue and say, hey, you know what? Our product kind of addresses this, and try to use it and see if it really works, if it really solves the problem. So the customer always has the last say. So, I mean, I love this this quote because there are a lot of arguments, there are a lot of, it's hard to be aligned on certain issues. But at the end of the day, if the customers reject whatever you do, that's it. I mean, it's not good. So they're the ones that have the last say. So the customer is always right in the fact that they're never going to accept being wrong. So then try arguing with the customer saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, you're wrong. They're not going to accept being wrong because it's about expectations and managing expectations. So this is really important. At the end of the day, however the customer feels, perceives the quality of the product is, how they perceive the quality of the product is the quality of the product and not what we think the quality is. So consider customer complaints like bugs that needs to be addressed. Either you need to address it or dismiss it. Sometimes not all complaints need to be fixed. So there's not in terms of a technical fix. So the solution isn't always technical. Sometimes the solution is a communication issue. So people have the wrong expectation for your product because somewhere along the customer journey, we haven't explained the right, we haven't set the customer up for the right expectations. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, we keep track of customer satisfaction KPIs, the CSAT, NPS. These are all really important, and they gauge the quality of your product from the point of view of the customer. Feedback plus data equals truth. So going back to debates and arguments about different topics internally. So cultivate the habit of looking at customer feedback, looking at data, and putting them together to make a solid argument. So because sometimes we have, especially even within the customer experience, the customer service team, one customer complains about something and then we're like, okay, yeah, that's true, but how many customers does that impact? Well, yeah, we need data to back things up because you're going to have a lot of complaints and you need to prioritize. So it's really important, and it depends on what data you collect. So accessing available customer behavior data and analytics will provide insights into these specific issues. So cultivate or build a relationship with your data and analytics team so you can quickly get insights into customer behavior or customer feedback based on the data. So just mine that customer feedback for insight on specific features and functionalities. So developing your superpowers. So I think they're definitely, you know, okay, they're soft skills, but they are your kinds of powers, because they're things you need to develop, they're things you can control, and they're skills that you can use to push your career forward and your trade forward in terms of how your approach to your work, your job. So the first thing in terms of being customer centric is developing the power of effective proposals. So you're going to be seeing a lot of feedback. You're going to have a lot of discussions about different issues, and you may come to a conclusion that something is right. You believe that this is the right direction we should go, but now you need to convince everyone else. And just developing this this skill of convincing people. So this is presentation skills, negotiation skills. These are all going to help you push your ideas forward, because unfortunately sometimes it's not necessarily the best or most impactful ideas that go forward. It's just the ideas that have the best advocates. So understanding how to propose new ideas properly in the way that they are more likely to be accepted is definitely going to help you in your career. Open collaboration. So work with others. And this is something I personally experienced, and especially if you're ever going from being an individual contributor to being a manager or more having more responsibilities. One of the big challenges you're going to face is going from just being a doer, doing things, and so everything you do is based on your own ability, to being able to get things done. So being able to bring people together to do something that you wouldn't have been able to do on your own. So really being very easy to work with, I would say, is really key. So you're approachable, and you feel comfortable approaching other people, asking for, asking questions, asking for advice, sharing data, sharing knowledge. For example, the customer service team has to work with the product team, they work with the tech team, they work with the music team, and I'm talking about Kuypers. And so when a customer has an issue, they don't necessarily have all the answers, but they have to find the answers. So this is where collaboration works. So working on communication skills, your people skills, and organization skills. These are really important. Genuine empathy. So empathy is, I would say, the fundamentals, and this is not, and these principles aren't necessarily in any particular order, but empathy, I would say, is really one of the most important skills to develop to be customer centric. And that is, we talked about it earlier, just putting yourself in the customer's shoes, being able to experience what the customer is experiencing is a very strong quality to have. And it's something that some people have a bit more of naturally, but it's definitely something that can be developed. So it's basically tuning into the feelings and experiences of others. And this, one of the skills to develop is really your listening skills. Start objectivity. And this, like empathy, it's something that comes a bit more easily to some, naturally to some, and it's a bit more difficult for others. But it's about putting aside your own individual biases and looking at the facts. It's very important, because in customer experience, especially when you start having customer feedback, you're tempted to dismiss some things based on your own experiences, or based on what you already believe about your product, or even about life in general. And it's important to be as objective as possible. And I find that one way of working on objectivity is being self-aware and being aware of your own biases. Like, I can be aware, I can know that, what, I don't listen to a lot of electronic music. So I know this about myself. So when I'm dealing with a customer that is a big electronic music fan, I know I have to be aware of this, that this is more important to this person than it is for me. So these are, it's really, I mean, it's a life skill, but it's also definitely a professional skill to develop. Analytical skills, definitely being able to look at data and information and being able to come to conclusions based on the information in front of you is very important. And lastly, we have Zen-like equanimity. So equanimity is used a lot in meditation and things like that. And I think I do meditation, and I think that's an important way of staying balanced. But in a more conventional way, you can talk about stress management in general. But it's about looking at taking both good and bad feedback in equal weight. And this is something that generally doesn't come naturally to us. We could have 1,000 positive experiences, and one negative experience just pollutes everything, and now we're in a bad mood. So just working on, you see people, raving fans, they love your product. That's great. And fans are complaining, customers complaining about your product. That's not so great, but hey, we put them together and we work on those things equally. Positive feedback lets you know what you're doing well and what your strengths are, and you can develop that. And negative feedback lets you know your weaknesses are and what you should work on. So definitely don't be negative and dismiss positive feedback, and don't be too optimistic and dismiss negative feedback and only look at positive feedback. So in conclusion, just a little recap into what we talked about. So we talked about identifying who matters, who your customers are. So putting the customer at the center of quality is important. Customer segmentation, understanding why we do that and how it can be done, and creating that persona that's going to be representative of your customer segment, and looking at the benefits. So we talked about the benefits we can have from customer segmentation from a QA point of view. Applying customer focus. So the way we apply customer focus, digging into support tickets and being nurturing that relationship with customer service, understanding that the customer experience continues when your QA ends. So it's not the end of the road. The customers are still using your product. Making continuous learning a habit, continuing learning about your product, learning about your customers, and getting that feedback, that loop, using that feedback loop to learn more about your customers and your industry. And understanding that you're not representative of all your customers. So put aside your biases and understand that you have different customer segments with different priorities. Use your own product, eat your own dog food. It's the best way to become close to your customer is to become the customer. The customer always has the last say. So the quality of your product is what your customers say the quality of your product is, and not what you think. Feedback plus data equals truth. So backing up your arguments with feedback and customer data to make more solid arguments. In terms of superpowers to develop, we talked about, developing your ability to make effective proposals, collaborate more efficiently and openly with different teams, cultivate empathy, genuine empathy with your customers, start objectivity as opposed to different subject with regards to different subject matters, and Zen-like equanimity, taking both the good and bad at equal weight. So that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or remarks. You have my LinkedIn here if you'd like to send an invite. I'm open to connecting.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It was very, very interesting. A lot of things. Very, very in details. That was very good. I will show you the questions so you can answer. First question from Daphne: how do you collaborate between QA and customer service? Do you have meetings with customer service team?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So this is something we're trying to do more and more of. So collaboration for us often, well, there are two ways we collaborate. So there's on a continuous basis. So what happens is we send certain customer support tickets to the QA team. So things that we believe are genuinely linked to bugs. And so there's a way of transforming the customer service tickets into a bug report. And so the QA team and the product team can take care of it. But in terms of anticipating bugs, this is where we work with the QA team before a major release. So if we know we're going to have a major release, a major feature or functionality or change, then we have a meeting with the QA team. We that's the QA and the customer service team. We talk about what has been tested, and we also talk about what issues we've been facing in terms of customer service. So customer service is going to say things like, hey, last time we did this, we had this and this issue. If we do this, customers are going to try to do this. They're going to complain about this. Did we test this? If not, we need to test this. So the customer service is basically giving us a last a checklist of things to make sure we do before we release this, because they know from experience that customers might have issues with certain issues, so with certain features.
Okay, thank you. Next we have, it's not a question, you talked about it. When from Valentin, when a customer takes time to call customer service support, and complain, we often try to explain why he or she is wrong instead of listening to the feedback. It is a mistake. We should value the time the customer is taking. You talk about it. Do you want to add on this?
Yeah, it's very important. The job of a customer service agent is really difficult. I mean, emotionally and in terms of skills, because you need to respond to all questions, and some customers aren't very friendly. But in general, the thing is, in terms of feedback, when customers contact customer service, the most important thing to understand is they want to be heard. They want you to listen to them. That's really, and if for any reason they feel like you're not listening to them, you have lost this customer. So that I would say, if there's anything to take away from this, customer service, when they complain, listen. Even if they're wrong, just listen and make them know that you've listened, and maybe try to reformulate what they've said to confirm that you have heard what they're complaining about and you understand the problem, even if you can't fix it.
Thank you. Next question from Daphne. How do you prioritize the customer support tickets in your backlog?
That's a very good question. And yeah, because we have, how we prioritize customer service tickets versus bugs. With customer service, I mean, it's very similar to QA. So in QA, you talk about, whether customers can still use the product. If the problem is linked to a major feature, for example, streaming service, if customers cannot stream music, that's a major problem. It's different from, hey, I'm just trying to arrange this in a certain way and have issues. So it's really about if it's a core functionality, and it's kind of the same thing. The other thing that kind of changes, and it's linked to QA as well, but it's the number of people that have the issue. So if we start seeing a wave of people complaining about the same thing, then it becomes a huge priority. Even if it seems to be minor, but if a lot of people are noticing it, it's a problem, because it could affect your company image.
Thank you. Next question from Lydie. How are taken into account the customer-driven KPI just by keeping them in mind?
Yeah, so what we do with the customer department, we share it with the whole team. So this is things that we measure, and so it's a very concrete metric. After a customer has an interaction with the product, the customer service, we ask them the CSAT question, and they give us a rating. So what we do is, you keep them in mind, but we monitor them. So we share the CSAT and the NPS scores regularly with the team. And if there's a drop in CSAT, we have an explanation. For example, if there's a major bug that's released in production and the CSAT goes down, we can share that, like, hey, this bug caused our CSAT to drop by 10%. So you quantify the impact of the bug, as opposed to just saying, oh, we found this bug in production and we need to fix it. So that's the real impact to the customer, is that drop in customer satisfaction.
And I guess it must be it might be straightforward. If your CSAT or your NPS goes down, your subscriptions goes down as well. I guess.
Yes, yes, it's very linked to money. I mean, it's about it's really about people. You lose money, especially in a subscription based model. When if customers are really unhappy, they just stop paying for your product, and then you start to see the financial impact. And that's once it starts touching the the money, then you start getting a lot of a lot of executives involved. So just yeah, be careful. But it usually starts with complaints, and when people start complaining, we have some time to fix the issue. But when we start having a financial impact, then it's maybe a bit late.
Thank you. Next question from Guillaume. Would you say that the customer experience principles can be applied for any product and in any organization?
I would say yes. If you have customers, I would say yes. I mean, it's of course easier when you're for the kind of products you would use on a daily basis. But I would say yes, it can be used for anything, B2B, B2C. On B2B, it's often regarded as customer success. But if your business is based on people coming to pay for your service, then yes, I believe you can use this principles for pretty much any product in any organization.
Thank you. Next question from Daphne. Do you invite customer support on exploratory testing sessions at Kuypers? Do you have open beta to collect feedback from customers?
Okay, exploratory testing sessions. What we do is we do several things. We invite pretty much anyone in the company to test the product in terms of exploratory testing. So customer service, of course, but internally we do internal testing. What you could consider alpha testing internally. And for the open beta, yes, we have a beta program for both our iOS and Android apps. So customers sign up and they get the version of the application before everyone else, and they're able to give us direct feedback through the beta application. So it gives us a chance to catch any last minute bugs before they go into production. So we have an open beta. Is it really an open beta? You have to sign up, but yeah, it's an open beta to collect feedback.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Arnaud. Would you say that it is customer experience team's responsibility to feed QA teams with information that will help them better understand the customers and, as a consequence, do a better job?
It's both. It's really a collaboration. So I think both teams need to be proactive. So if QA feels like there is a really important feature coming up and they're not really sure if they have enough test cases or they're not very confident, they should reach out to customer service, and they could perhaps provide some additional scenarios. And likewise, customer or CX can proactively say, hey, we know this project is coming up, and last time we had this issue, so keep that in mind. Keep this, and that in mind. And so it's a collaboration.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Arnaud. Does it make it easier to be providing an high-end service, or on the contrary, even more difficult? Passionate customers can be understanding, but also demanding.
Yes, it's more difficult because customers are very passionate. They're very precise in what they like. So our customer base is different from Spotify or Deezer or the other competitors. So they're very passionate about music. They want to listen to the music in a certain way. So it's not a one size fits all necessarily. So they may be very passionate about, for example, we have a download service. So we have customers that still want to download, even though a lot of people are quite happy with streaming. And so downloading is very important, and being able to get the right audio quality when they download is very important. So we can't just give them, hey, just download the album in MP3 quality. We need to specify exactly what quality it is in detail. So it's high resolution, 24-bit, 192 kilohertz. You know, these are the kind of customers we have. We can't just give them a file and say, hey, here's your music. So it definitely makes it more difficult. And these kind of customers can easily lose their confidence in you because they have very high expectations.
And how often do you deliver a major version? In my mind, it's like if you have a major issue, when is it fixed in production?
Well, we hope not to have major issues, but in general, so I mean, we're agile, so it's, you know, every 2 weeks, we have regular updates. If there is a problem, a major problem, that is something that's really impacting the basic use of the application, we do a hot fix, but that's really a last resort. We try to see if we can hold out to the next version to fix issues.
Okay, thank you. And next question from Arnaud. How is involved the product manager or product team into these activities? Definition of the persona, beta or quad testing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So beta testing is definitely, I mean, for us, it touches both the customer and the product, but I would say it's driven by the product team in terms of beta testing. Crowd testing is also driven by product and QA team. So in terms of how they're involved, I would say the persona, the customer segmentation, these are things that are communicated to the whole company. So everyone needs to be aware of this because it impacts marketing and impacts everything. So yeah, so that's their responsibility. But in terms of beta testing, crowd testing, user testing, it's generally on the product side, but of course with collaboration with the customer department. But it should be driven by the product.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't have any more questions. Thank you for this very nice presentation, for the time you took to answer all the questions. And thank you again. I don't know what to say.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Have a nice evening and see you soon.
All right. Thanks, you too. Bye.
Eh bien, merci à tous d'être... Ouais, je vais enlever la question. Merci à tous d'être restés jusqu'au bout. Et merci à ceux qui regarderont en replay. Je vous souhaite une bonne soirée. Je vous rappelle qu'il reste les conférences de demain. Donc 3 talks, même lieu, même heure. Donc de 18h à 21h, on repostera le programme. Je vais plutôt mettre ça plutôt que de mettre ma tête. Hop. Je sais pas le faire, désolé. Effet démo. Oui, et du coup, si vous voulez continuer à échanger, n'hésitez pas à continuer à utiliser Discord. Donc le lien est dans les commentaires, à vous connecter pour soit discuter par chat ou discuter de vive voix, c'est possible également. Et je vous souhaite une bonne soirée et vous donne rendez-vous à demain. Merci à toute l'équipe qui était en backstage avec moi.